Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Grandpa. What you did in the 1950s was exposed. Parallel world. In 2050, on the occasion of the 101st anniversary of the founding of the Great Xia Kingdom, relevant departments declassified a batch of top-secret materials that had been sealed for 100 years. After watching online, the heir of the world's largest conglomerate was shocked to find that the one who was listed as the highest level of confidentiality for a whole 100 years was actually their own grandfather. 100 years ago, her grandfather, Douheixin Club, Douwuliang Chamber of Commerce, and Douheixin foreign companies, were invincible. He quietly dug up the gold and silver treasures buried in Southeast Asia by the Japanese nation, and retrieved countless national treasures that had been plundered by foreign powers. And let those capitalists who became wealthy by plundering the wealth of Xia country over 100 years ago go bankrupt. After reading the materials, the girl excitedly rushed into her grandfather's residence. Grandpa. What you did in the 1950s has been exposed. Grandpa glanced at it and smiled. Is that all? Come on, good granddaughter. Since you are so interested, Grandpa will tell you about 100 years ago. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 001. Parallel Worlds. Rebirth 1950. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Parallel World. In 2050, on the occasion of the 101st anniversary of the founding of the Great Xia Kingdom, relevant departments declassified a batch of top-secret materials that had been sealed for 100 years. After watching online, Su Tian, the heir of the world's largest conglomerate, was shocked to find that the one who had been listed as the highest level of confidentiality for a whole 100 years was actually her own unscrupulous grandfather, who was almost 120 years old and was still showing off his muscles, exercising, and watching his little sister dance on the Tian video website. According to the information, 100 years ago, her grandfather, Douheixin Club, Douwuliang Chamber of Commerce, and Douheixin foreign companies, were invincible. He quietly dug up the gold and silver treasures buried in Southeast Asia by the Japanese nation, and retrieved countless national treasures that had been plundered by foreign powers. And let those capitalists who became wealthy by plundering the wealth of Xia country over 100 years ago go bankrupt. After reading the materials, the girl excitedly rushed into her grandfather's residence. Grandpa. What you did in the 1950s has been exposed. Grandpa glanced at it and smiled. Is that all? Come on, good granddaughter. Since you are so interested, Grandpa will tell you a story that happened 100 years ago. Blue Star, Xiangjiang. In a dilapidated and cramped wooden house, Suja slowly opened his eyes. Taking advantage of the sunlight shining from the broken window paper on the side, Suja looked at the deserted environment and grinned. Where is this? Standing up straight from the tattered wooden bed, Suja rubbed his sore neck with his hand and instinctively looked at his own hand. This doesn't seem to be my hand. Suja saw his delicate and tender hands through the kerosene lamp, and then pinched his face. What's the feeling of collagen all over my hands? Grass. I shouldn't have borrowed a corpse to resurrect myself, right? Suja couldn't help but think of what happened before he lost consciousness. As a rising star entrepreneur in Xia country, Suja was invited to participate in an economic forum jointly organized by the world's top 10 conglomerates on the world's largest luxury cruise ship. The scale of this economic forum is unprecedented, with wealthy, aristocratic, and famous people from all over the world gathered on the cruise ship, as well as elites from various industries. Even several wealthy, aristocratic, and famous people who are nearly 100 years old attended this forum. As a result, just as the cruise ship was sailing into Southeast Asian waters, it encountered a sudden tsunami. Suja remembers that the last scene he saw before falling into a coma was the constantly tumbling room and the rushing seawater, as well as 3 international young models screaming by the bedside. At this moment, Suja felt a sudden and inexplicable pain in his head. Subsequently, waves of memories surged in like a tsunami. Suzha found that these memories not only contain memories of the original owner of this body, but also memories from others. These memories are too vast, just like 1 million tons of water being packed into a 1 meter square box, it's as if it's going to crush Suzha's head. Just here, an inexplicable warm current flowed out with this huge memory flow, constantly warming Suzha's brain and even his limbs and bones. Suzha keenly felt that with the emergence of this warm current, his brain seemed to be constantly being developed, and the absorption of those memories was also accelerating. At the same time, it seems that my body is also undergoing some changes. And as he absorbed these memories, Suzha found that this huge stream of memories was actually the memories of everyone on that luxurious cruise ship. There are wealthy celebrities, bodyguards, world-renowned historians, writers, and even several top international assassins and thieves. I don't know how long it took, but Suzha finally completed the absorption and fusion of these memories. At this moment, Suzha realized that his whole body had been soaked in sweat. At the same time, Suzha also understood his current situation. He was indeed reborn into a young man with the same name and surname several decades ago. The location he is currently in is in a residential area on the outskirts of Xiangjiang New Territories. Unlike being an orphan when I was born in the first year of junior high school, the parents of the original owner are still alive, and it seems like they are still a bit small. The father of the original owner was named Su Xiaoyun. He once worshipped Zhang Renkue, the big generation of the Qin gang, as the old man or godfather, and ranked him in the Tong generation. In terms of seniority, Douheixin had to call him senior uncle when he met him. He was also a big brother-level figure in the Qin gang. However, Douheixin himself later grew up and founded Hengxia, while Su Xiaoyun belonged to the big shots of Renxi. Although there was an intersection between the two sides, there was no such thing as friendship. Later, due to the dramatic changes in the mainland, several big club leaders of the Qin gang and their own little brothers also left the Magic City to seek refuge in Xiangjiang, including Su Xiaoyun. However, under the light of Douheixin, the first member of the Qin gang, his arrival did not attract much attention. Originally, Su Xiaoyun planned to regroup and regain the prestige of the Ren society in the Demon City after arriving in Xiangjiang, but unexpectedly, as soon as he arrived in Xiangjiang, he was targeted by someone. It's none other than Li Cuifa, who is known as Xiangjiang Douheixin, who is staring at him. This Li Jianfa was once a younger brother under Douheixin's command. Due to his unwillingness, he only became a little boy and led a few brothers to venture into Xiangjiang. Finally, with Douheixin's support, he broke out of Mingtang and established the name Qingbang in Xiangjiang. However, in Xiangjiang, as an outsider, the Qin gang has always been feared and excluded by other prefixes. In addition, in this era, the gang prefixes only recruit fellow villagers, and a character with a background of magic capital can only attract fewer subordinates here, making it impossible to expand their territory. And now the arrival of a large number of members of the youth gang has given Li Tyla hope. Originally, changing jobs between the beginning of a sentence was a taboo and would result in the punishment of 3 swords and 6 holes. However, both Li Cuifa and Su Xiaoyun belong to the Qin gang system, only belonging to different clubs. Therefore, it is not considered changing jobs or violating taboos in the martial arts world. So, on the one hand, Li Cuifa took good care of Douheixin, and on the other hand, he borrowed Douheixin's name to start buying members of the Qin gang on a large scale. After all, the number of members of the youth gang who have escaped from the disaster is limited. If Li Jianfa has collected more, it means that the number of other factions of the youth gang will be less. As a leader of the Qin gang Ren society, Su Xiaoyun is not willing to be content. Not to mention anything else, when it comes to seniority, Li Tyla still needs to call him master. A grandchild dares to dig a corner of his grandfather's wall. Who can bear this? So, the conflict between the two sides became deeper and deeper. 2 months after arriving in Xiangjiang, friction began to break out between the two sides. In the past 2 short months, there have been frequent clashes, with each conflict causing injuries ranging from tens to 20 people to even 3 to 5 deaths. As the conflict between the two sides grew stronger, the two merchants who had some friendship with Su Xiaoyun took the initiative to contact Su Xiaoyun, expressing their willingness to act as intermediaries to mediate between him and Li Cuifa and ease the conflict between the two sides. Both sides agreed to have morning tea at a tea house owned by a merchant from the Magic City this morning. Out of trust in these old acquaintances, Su Xiaoyun went to the meeting with 2 younger brothers. However, the other party had already colluded with Li Cuifa in secret and reported to the police for robbery, arresting Su Xiaoyun. As for the original owner himself, he was a student at Mordo National Chao Tung University. However, as soon as he finished his freshman year, he was pulled by his father to flee to Xiangjiang. However, due to his unfamiliarity with the local environment, his health has not been good since he arrived. A week ago, he even had a high fever and was replaced by himself. And today, it is March 1, 1950, at December 2000, noon. In 1950, in Xiangjiang, houses were still priced at cabbage, and human lives were as thin as paper. This is the worst era, with black and white collusion and chaotic order. This is the best era, as long as it is tough enough, there is gold everywhere. Suja felt that this was simply an era tailored for his current self. However, for now, we must first save our cheap old man as soon as possible. After all, if you occupy your own body, then you naturally have to accept his kindness. In addition, in this disorderly and chaotic Xiangjiang, if you don't have a strong enough force in your hands, nothing is easy to do. Once you open the door to do business and don't have the protection of the force, just wait for a group of people to come to collect protection fees every day. Just then, Suja heard a commotion outside. It turned out that the brothers in the gang had a disagreement on how to rescue Su Xiaoyun. Some brothers said they have already established a relationship and only need 30,000 yuan to get Su Xiaoyun out, but others said that 30,000 yuan is too much. With this money, it's better to go directly to the black market to buy hundreds of submachine guns and run to the police station to rescue the big brother. At the same time, they will also surprise those bad guys and snatch him again, and then run around gracefully. This Nima. You truly deserve to be the Demon City Qin gang. Dare to do this. Upon hearing this, Suja, who had been hiding at the door listening to the corner of the wall, knew it was time to appear on his own. Squeak. With a dry friction sound from the wooden shaft, Suja opened the bedroom door and walked out. Mom, my high fever seems to have subsided. What are you discussing? It's so lively. Everyone. Chapter 002. The Unknown Gold Ship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this moment, in the front seat of the lobby, there was a woman wearing a coarse floral robe. This woman is none other than Su Xiaoyun's wife, the mother of the original owner, Wang Meifeng. Wang Meifeng was originally a famous female tycoon in the northern rivers and lakes, nicknamed Yuluosha. She used a hidden weapon from the swallow sex darts to kill the traders, making them tremble with fear. By chance, Wang Meifeng met Su Xiaoyun and fell in love at first sight. After getting married, she retired from the martial arts world and settled down in the Demon City, where she was a husband and a child. 18 years have passed in a blink of an eye, and the current martial arts world may have long forgotten the character of Wang Meifeng. However, Su Xiaoyun's brothers still remember clearly that their sister-in-law is not easy to deal with. Therefore, after Su Xiaoyun was arrested, Wang Meifeng naturally became their backbone. Seeing Suja, who had been running a fever for a week, walking out of the room and having recovered, everyone couldn't help but feel a burst of joy. As the second in charge of the internal intelligence, Guchuang immediately said, "Sister-in-law, Aja has just recovered and needs to rest well. You take care of Aja first, and we won't disturb you for now. As for other matters, don't worry, we'll talk about it later." After speaking, Guchuang immediately signaled to the other brothers, then greeted Su Zhe and left the wooden house. "Ah Zhe, are you hungry now? Mom is going to cook for you." Wang Meifeng asked with concern. "Mom, I'm not very hungry yet." Su Zhe shook his head and looked at Wang Meifeng. "Did my dad get caught by a bad guy?" Wang Meifeng nodded and said, "Did you hear it just now?" "Well," Su Zhe replied, "do you really want to pawn the dowry jewelry left by your grandmother?" Just now, Su Zhe heard Wang Meifeng say that he wanted to pawn his jewelry and raise enough money to retrieve Su Xiaoyan. Through his own memory, Su Zhe knew that Wang Meifeng's parents had actually passed away when she was 10 years old, leaving only a few gold and silver jewelry for her. That was the dowry that Wang Meifeng's mother gave her when she got married. It can be said that for Wang Meifeng, these jewelry pieces have extraordinary significance. "There's nothing else we can do now," Wang Meifeng shook her head and said, "if we don't get your father out as soon as possible, I'm afraid in 2 more days, Li Cuifa will poison your father." "Mom, you keep that jewelry and don't have to sell it," Su Zhe said. "I have a way to get money." "What?" Wang Meifeng hesitated for a moment and looked at her son who was recovering from a serious illness. "What do you have in mind?" Su Zhe smiled and said, "Mom, have you ever heard of a gold ship? The gold transport ship." Wang Meifeng was stunned for a moment. As the once dominant Jade Rakshasa, she naturally knew about the gold transport ship and said, "Are you referring to the ship that the Fruit Army used to transport gold from the mainland in the past?" "It's not the Fruit Army, it's John Bull and Gallic Chicken." Su Zhe said, "Back then, John Bull and Gallic Rooster used 2 Yappian wars to plunder gold and silver treasures, and then loaded these treasures onto ships to transport them back to China. During the voyage, many gold ships carrying gold and silver treasures had accidents and were engulfed by the sea. Coincidentally, I know that a gold transport ship sank in a sea area not far from the Xiang River." Upon hearing this, Wang Meifeng couldn't help but ask, "How did you know? Have you forgotten where I went to college?" "It's Jiaotong University. I used to be idle and bored on weekdays. I often run to our school library to read books, and then accidentally stumble upon a log from the last century. The person who wrote this log is the survivor of one of the sunken ships." Wang Meifeng asked again, "Since he knows the location of the sunken ship, why don't he go and salvage it himself?" "Mom, don't you think about it, that was the last century." Su Zhe smiled helplessly and said, "How could there be such advanced salvage equipment at that time? I estimate that the crew also wrote it down as a topic of discussion because they knew no one could salvage that sunken ship. As long as we can salvage this gold-carrying ship, we can obtain countless gold and silver treasures. When the time comes, not to mention bringing out Dad, even if we kill a Li Taylor and add a struggling Douheixin, it's not a problem." What Su Zhe said about the navigation log is purely fabricated. It's just bullying his mother who hasn't gone to college or the library. I don't understand. However, there are indeed more than one gold transport ship sinking in the waters near the Xiang River. In the thousands of memories that Su Zhe merged, 3 out of them were owned by the 3 giants of the world. Renowned Deep.Sea Salvage Company. Those 3 giants were the earliest in the world to engage in commercial salvage, and their first barrel of gold came from several sunken gold ships near the Xiangjiang River. According to memory, the first gold ship they salvaged was in 1953, and that ship alone brought them over £1 million in profits. According to the exchange rate at that time, if converted to US dollars, it would be 4 million. If converted to Hong Kong dollars, it would be 16 million. And that year, in London, the capital of John Bull, the price of a house was only £2,003. It was with this first bucket of gold that the 3 giants expanded their company scale, introduced more advanced salvage equipment, and increased their efforts in underwater salvage. In just 2 years, they salvaged 3 sunken ships in the waters near the Xiangjiang River. According to their memory, those 4 sunken ships combined brought them over £5 million in net profits and solidified their economic foundation as international ocean salvage leaders. Of course, in this lifetime, these people cannot earn this first bucket of gold again. Because now, all these sunken ships will be in Suja's bag. Chapter 003. Sailing Away. Salvage the Gold Ship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. To salvage a sunken ship, the first step is to have a ship, followed by diving and salvage equipment. This is not a difficult task in Xiangjiang. As one of the largest ports in East Asia in the 1940s and 1950s, Xiangjiang had only a few other ports, but many ships. In the afternoon of that day, Wang Meifeng took out the only $6,000 at home. As the spokesperson of the Qingbangren Society, Su Xiaoyun had about $30,000 with him when he first arrived in Xiangjiang. According to the current 1.4 exchange ratio between US dollars and Hong Kong dollars, it was equivalent to as much as 120,000 Hong Kong dollars, which could be considered a huge sum of money. However, since the conflict with Cuifa, Su Xiaoyun's money has rapidly depleted, to the point where in just 6 months, he only has $6,000 left. With this money, Wang Meifeng personally made a trip to the Hang Seng Bank, exchanged all $6,000 into Hong Kong dollars, and took out 20,000 Hong Kong dollars as a guarantee fee to rent a fishing boat with a displacement of 1,000 tons from a Chaoshan ship's bow. Next up is diving and salvage equipment. In the 1940s and 1950s, diving and salvage equipment were classified as military supplies and were generally only purchased and used by officials. Few people in the public would purchase these equipment, so it was basically difficult to buy them on the market. If you wanted to buy them, you had to book with a foreign company and then transport them from your home country. Not to mention the high price, the time is too long. If we really have to wait until then, it's estimated that even the cheap father's body will be cold. But this won't defeat Su Zhe. Just as Wang Meifeng went to rent a fishing boat, Su Zhe went to the freight company to rent 2 pickup trucks and then went to the largest vegetable market in the new territories. He spent 2,000 Hong Kong dollars to purchase 2 full trucks of various vegetables and transported them to the entrance of the military base. When these 2 trucks loaded with various vegetables appeared at the entrance of the base, it immediately alarmed the logistics department manager of the base. Before October last year, the number of troops stationed by John Bull in Xiangjiang was basically maintained at around 15,000. With the dramatic changes in the northern continent, the entire international situation suddenly became turbulent, and many people believed that John Cao, who was already in decline, was very likely to be unable to maintain the Xiangjiang River. Perhaps to maintain the face of the remaining empire that never sets, or perhaps to show that he is still the first capital power under the beautiful country, John Bull directly increased the number of troops stationed in Xiangjiang from 15,000 to 30,000. As a result, they only wanted to increase the number of troops stationed, but did not increase the corresponding logistic supply and replenishment. According to the agreement between the supplier and the military base, they will deliver food supplies to the base every half-month, which can basically ensure the use of 15,000 soldiers and their families within half a month. However, with the arrival of the 15,000 new soldiers and their accompanying families, the speed of material consumption at the station base instantly surged. In less than a week, all the supplies that were originally planned to last for half a month were depleted. At the sight of this situation, the logistics department of the base immediately contacted the supplier and asked them to supply the goods as soon as possible. However, the suppliers are using the excuse that the base consumption is too fast and the supply of materials is insufficient, resulting in continuous price increases at the source. The lion is loudly demanding a 50% increase. If the station military base is not willing to accept it, they will use harsh language to threaten those suppliers. If they do not supply quickly, their qualifications as base suppliers will be immediately cancelled. Faced with the threat from the base, those suppliers remained unmoved, even ignoring it. Watching the supply of supplies in the base dwindle, and the few suppliers delaying the delivery of supplies, the base commander became furious and immediately ordered the termination of contracts with those suppliers and the search for other suppliers to quickly solve the supply problem. However, before the logistics department of the base could implement this order, the base commander received a phone call from the London headquarters. The headquarters officials politely but with a warning, reminded the base commander that those suppliers were companies under the 4 major foreign companies in Xiangjiang. And behind these 4 major foreign firms stands a group of capitalist nobles from London. Once they are angered, he, the commander of the Xiangjiang garrison, may be revoked at any time. In the end, the station commander reluctantly cancelled the order to terminate the contract, but he was unwilling to be held by those damned suppliers, so he ordered the logistics department to find ways to solve the food supply problem from other channels on their own. These things are actually unknown to the outside world, and Suzhou also found them from the memories of more than 6,000 people who merged. In that merged memory of over 6,000, there happened to be an officer from the Xiangjiang garrison base in this era. And this officer is none other than the logistics department manager at the current Xiangjiang garrison base. With these 2 trucks of free vegetables, Suzhou easily obtained 2 new sets of diving and salvage equipment from this supervisor. In the quotation of the foreign company, a set of diving and salvage equipment like this costs at least 5,000 Hong Kong dollars. And now, Suzhou only managed to get 2,000, and there are still 2 sets for each. It's not that this logistics manager is naturally generous, it's just because these diving, salvage and other equipment were originally loot they seized from the hands of the foot-pot chickens. For the base, these things take up space and it's a pity to lose them. Now someone needs to exchange 2 whole carts of vegetables that their base urgently needs for these useless things, so naturally they will simply replace them. To thank the logistics supervisor for his generosity, Suzhou came up with an idea that was sufficient to deal with the current supply crisis. When the supervisor heard Suzhou's idea, his face lit up with joy. With the fusion of memories, Suzhou was very proficient in operating diving and salvage equipment produced in the 1940s. As for ship navigation, it was not a problem. Among the thousands of memories of fusion, there were only a dozen who could sail, including several legendary captains from the 1940s and 1950s. At the same time, Suzhou found that after being reborn, his strength seemed a bit outrageous. That diving equipment weighing nearly 100 pounds, he was able to easily lift it flat with one hand, and a solid wood door panel that was 2 centimeters thick was smashed in half by his punch. According to Wang Meifeng, Suzhou may have benefited from misfortune. A high fever burned through his Ren and Du meridians, directly stimulating his innate divine power. Okay. You're an old lady, everything you say is right. After spending some time familiarizing himself with ships and diving and salvage equipment, Suzhou, on the 2nd day after his rebirth, had breakfast and quietly set sail with his mother Wang Meifeng. Chapter 004. Brilliant Gold. The entire ship's wealth of gold and silver. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The weather is clear and the sea breeze is blowing. The cargo ship is sailing towards its destination at an average speed of 18 knots. The speed of 18 knots, which is equivalent to 33.336 km per hour, is basically the speed of a future electric vehicle. In the eyes of future generations, this speed is simply outrageously slow, but for the cargo ships of the 1950s, this speed is no longer considered slow. In Suzhou's memory, the closest gold transport ship to the Xiangjiang River sank 54 nautical miles southeast of the river, and this gold transport ship is also the most valuable among the 4 gold transport ships that sank in the waters near the Xiangjiang River. As the freighter continued to sail south, the seawater gradually turned from emerald green to deep blue. After driving for about 3 hours, Suzhou successfully arrived near the sinking location of the gold transport ship. Subsequently, Suzhou compared the position in his memory and confirmed the final position using a sextant, driving the ship to the water above the sunken ship. Mom, drop the anchor. Suzhou turned off the engine, that's it. Okay. Wang Meifeng threw the iron anchor into the sea according to her words. When Suzhou came out of the cockpit, Wang Meifeng asked, what should we do next? Mom, you stay on the deck, Suzhou said, I'll go down and see the situation. Upon hearing this, Wang Meifeng immediately said, "Why don't I go down? Don't be fooled by your mother. I'm from the north, but I grew up at the Jinmen dock since I was young. When I was young, I followed your grandfather and his companions to go fishing in the sea every day and every 2 days. Not to mention the abundance, diving 30 to 40 meters should not be a problem." Upon hearing this, Suzhi couldn't help but smile and say, "Mom, the shallowest ones in this sea area are all 70.80 meters deep. Without special training and equipment, I'm afraid they can't get down." "What? It's so deep." Wang Meifeng took a deep breath and said, "So how are you going to get down?" "Damn it," Suzhi said as he pointed to the diving equipment that had been placed on the deck early in the morning. Thanks to the importance placed on deep-sea strategies by countries during the 2 world wars, diving equipment has made rapid progress in just 30 years. By the 1940s, diving equipment produced by countries such as Eagle Sauce, John Bull, and Hans Cat could basically dive to depths of up to 100 meters underwater. The 2 sets of diving equipment in Suzhi's hands were military diving equipment purchased by the Foot Bull Chicken from Hans Cat before their defeat. However, before they could be used, the war ended and John Bull picked them up for a bargain. But in the end, it was cheaper for Suzhi. With the help of Wang Meifeng, Suzhi put on this heavy diving suit, carried 2 oxygen cylinders and 2 burlap bags on his back, and then stepped on the salvage rope and went into the sea. As the depth increases, the light on the seabed also becomes increasingly dim. About 5 or 6 minutes later, Suzhi's feet landed on the seabed. For Suzhi, who has had multiple deep diving experiences in his past life, the beautiful underwater scenery has no attraction to him, let alone in this 100-meter deep sea, all the scenery appears dull and not as beautiful as imagined. Suzhi took out his portable diving flashlight and prepared to search for the location of the sunken ship. As a result, as soon as the flashlight was turned on, the light projected straight onto a high wall. Take a closer look. This is not a wall. It's clearly just a hull. This Nima is simply out of luck. No need to search, this sunken ship is right in front of me. Suzhi circled around the sunken ship, then found the position of the deck and entered the cabin. According to the memories of the 3 giants in the salvage industry in his mind, Suzhi successfully found the cargo hold where the gold and silver treasures were placed. As the cabin door opened, what came into view were boxes scattered throughout the cabin, as well as gold scattered all over the ground. As the light of Suzhi's flashlight swept over, these gold that had been dormant at the bottom of the sea for over 100 years suddenly emitted a dazzling color. That is the radiance of money. Suzhi opened a well-preserved box, inside which were neatly stacked gold bars, each with the words 1 kilogram engraved on it. Suzhi counted and found that there were about 25 pieces of gold and silver in a box, which is 25 kilograms. And there are about 200 boxes in the entire cabin, which means that just this cabin alone has a full 5 tons of gold. Subsequently, Suzhi went to inspect several adjacent cabins and found nearly 10 tons of silver, various jewelry, jade, and precious porcelain. Through memory, Suzhi knew that the gold, silver, and jade artifacts on this ship ultimately brought a total profit of £2 million to the 3 giants. And now, all the profits on this ship will belong to Suzhi. Pressing the excitement and joy in his heart, Suzhi returned to the gold cargo hold and then loaded 2 boxes of gold bars into each of the 2 burlap bags before exiting the sunken ship. From the beginning, Suzhi had no intention of salvaging the entire gold-carrying ship today. After all, the reason is still because the foundation is too shallow. Do you believe it or not to mention the entire gold transport ship, if Suzhi salvaged a ton of gold today, then within 3 days, their family of 3 will be lying dead on the streets. No one is rich without windfall, but without sufficient strength, the windfall will only turn into a disaster. So, before mastering enough strength, Suzhi wouldn't be foolish enough to salvage the entire gold transport ship. Carrying 2 burlap bags filled with gold bars, Suzhi walked out of the deck and climbed up the salvage rope. As the rope rose, Suzhou took a deep look at the silent gold-carrying ship under his feet. Don't worry. Within 6 months, I will definitely salvage your entire life. Chapter 005. Return. Crazy gold prices. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A few minutes later, Suzhou returned to the deck smoothly. After unloading the diving equipment, Suzhou took a long breath and looked at Wang Meifeng, who had a caring and expectant expression on her face. She smiled and patted a burlap bag next to her, saying, "Mom, lift the anchor and go home to save Dad." Okay. Upon hearing this, Wang Meifeng immediately smiled and went over to activate the anchoring equipment, retracting the ship's anchor. As for Suzhou, he returned to the cockpit with a sack in one hand, threw the 2 sacks aside, and then started the engine to return. On the way home, Wang Meifeng opened one of the burlap bags and took a look. Despite being accustomed to the bloody world of the martial arts world, she was also dazzled by the gold bars in this burlap bag. Wang Meifeng instinctively asked, "Zhe, how many gold bars did you bring up?" Suzhou controlled the course while eating the meat buns he brought onto the ship in the morning and said, "About 200 pounds. Sure, so much." Wang Meifeng widened her eyes. "I heard that the price of gold in Xiangjiang has skyrocketed in the past 2 years. On Jining Street, 1 gram of gold can be sold for 20 Hong Kong dollars. How much can 200 kilograms of gold be sold for?" Before Wang Meifeng could figure it out, Suzhou replied, "It can sell for 2 million Hong Kong dollars. So much." Wang Meifeng took a deep breath. "Isn't that even richer than Douheixin?" Legend has it that when Douheixin fled from the demon capital to Xiangjiang, he carried a total of $400,000 with him. At the current exchange rate, $400,000 is 1.6 million Hong Kong dollars. What is Douheixin? Suzhou smiled and asked, "Mom, do you know how much gold, silver, and jewelry there are on that gold transport ship?" "How many?" Wang Meifeng asked subconsciously. Suzhou said, "Not to mention other jade and jewelry, just gold bars alone weigh about 5 tons. Silver is about 10 tons. Wang Meifeng widened her eyes and said, "What? So many?" This unimaginable number completely shocked her, to the point where she forgot to even take a breath of air in reverse. "How much can this sell for?" After a long time, Wang Meifeng regained her senses and murmured. "If it were based on the current gold price of Xiangjiang, it could sell for 100 million Hong Kong dollars. Suzhou smiled. Of course, he did not tell Wang Meifeng that the current gold price in Xiangjiang was actually stirred up by a group of capitalists. If he threw out these 5 tons of gold in one go, it would probably directly shatter the gold price in Xiangjiang. 49 years ago, the gold price of Xiangjiang was basically consistent with the international gold price, maintaining around $40 per ounce, which is around 5 Hong Kong dollars and 60 cents per gram, with little fluctuation. However, starting from May 49, as a group of bankers and financial speculators from the Magic City flooded into Xiangjiang, the gold price of Xiangjiang began to soar. In just 1 week, Xiangjiang gold skyrocketed from $40 per ounce to $50 per ounce. By October 1, 1949, it had risen to $80 per ounce, and the increase was still ongoing. By the end of this year, the gold price of Xiangjiang had risen to an irrational level of around $149 per ounce, which would be around 20 Hong Kong dollars per gram, according to Xiangjiang's usual measurement unit. The reason why gold prices have skyrocketed so much is precisely due to the joint speculation of those Magic City bankers and financial speculators. They used their financial experience in the Magic City to stir-fry gold in Xiangjiang, claiming to give Xiangjiang and this group of bumpkins a long experience. However, what they may never have dreamed of was that a group of local chambers of commerce in Xiangjiang had secretly teamed up and killed them all in this golden speculation feast in early '51. With the bankruptcy of those magic city bankers and financial speculators, the price of Xiangjiang gold has also returned to the level of international gold prices. In 1952, a beautiful country with over 20,000 tons of gold reserves suddenly sold gold to the outside world, causing the international gold price to fall in response, dropping from $40 per ounce to $30 per ounce. That's also why those three giants only made £2 million after salvaging this gold ship. Because the price of gold has dropped. 100 million Hong Kong dollars. When Wang Meifeng heard that the gold on the gold ship could be sold for 100 million Hong Kong dollars, she was completely dumbfounded. After a long time, Wang Meifeng regained her senses and whispered, "Well, if we really make 100 million Hong Kong dollars, then why are your father and those members of the Qin gang still in the world?" "Mom," Suzha said, "I want to have a good chat with Dad when he comes back." Wang Meifeng couldn't help but ask curiously, "What do you want to talk to your dad about?" Suzha smiled and said, "You'll know then." Chapter 006. Control the Xiangjiang River and Conquer the World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 3 hours later, Suzha returned to the sea near the Xiang River. Suzha did not immediately return to the dock, but instead found the Dan family members living on the sea near the Xiangjiang River. They bought 2 baskets of live seafood from their ship, poured out all the seafood, evenly placed the gold bars in 2 burlap bags at the bottom of the bamboo basket, and then laid a layer of seafood on top. The rest was thrown into the sea before returning to the dock. After the ship docked, Suzha personally loaded these 2 baskets of seafood with gold bars onto the truck, and then returned home smoothly all the way. At home, the mother and son poured the seafood into the yard, took out all the gold from the bamboo basket, and piled it under the bed in the bedroom. Subsequently, Wang Meifeng didn't hesitate to go wash herself early and remove the fishy smell from her body. She took 2 2-pound gold bars and walked out, saying, "You're staying here. I'll go get your dad out." "Okay, Mom," Suzha nodded, "please pay attention to safety." "Don't worry," Wang Meifeng smiled and shook her hand in front of her son. Suddenly, a bright dagger appeared in her hand, and then she threw it. Shwa! The dagger instantly sank into the wooden door 5 meters away, leaving only a handle. Suzha. Sigma, A. After pulling out the dagger, Wang Meifeng raised her chin towards her son and said arrogantly, "Your mother and I didn't live up to our reputation back then." Looking at this tough old lady, Suzha couldn't help but shout in his heart. "Mom is mighty." After Wang Meifeng left, Suzha walked into the yard and took a bath with the water from the water tank. In January, the temperature in Xiangjiang during the day was around 20 degrees Celsius. For ordinary people, taking a cold shower at this temperature may be a bit self-destructive, but for Suzha's current physical condition, it is not a big deal. After taking a shower, Suzha changed into dry clothes and then went to the yard to pick up the crabs that had been thrown and crawling in the yard one by one into a bamboo basket. He then brought tools such as knives and cutting boards from the kitchen and began to deal with the half-dead sea fish. Initially, in order to entertain global billionaires and celebrities, the organizers of the conference invited a total of 30 world-class chefs to board the ship. Now, all the cooking skills and techniques, as well as all the cooking experience of these 30 top chefs, belong to Suzha. It's not an exaggeration to say that even if Suzha doesn't do anything, it's not a problem to become a billionaire just by opening a restaurant in Xiangjiang and relying on his skills. 20 years later, among the top 100 billionaires in Xiangjiang, there will be several from the catering industry. Of course, Suzha doesn't want to be a catering tycoon. For him, doing catering is really not a challenge. Since they have all lived up to their second son, if they don't play a big game, they really can't live up to the life that God gave them. What Suzha is going to prepare is a popular Jianghu dish. Pickled Chinese cabbage fish. It took over an hour to cut dozens of fish into slices, then add salt, cooking wine, monosodium glutamate, and egg white, and mix well to evenly coat the fish slices with a layer of egg batter. Later, Xu took the rest of the fish and ran to his neighbor's house next door from Sichuan province and northeast China, where he exchanged some peppers and pickled Chinese cabbage. When Wang Meifeng walked into the house with Su Xiaoyun and others, she smelled a strong smell of pickled Chinese cabbage and fish. Who's cooking? Is it so fragrant? Wang Meifeng was stunned for a moment before shouting, "Ah, je. Are you at home?" Suddenly, Suja's voice came from the kitchen. "Mom, I'm in the kitchen. You ask Dad to take a shower first to get rid of the bad luck, and I'll prepare the dishes right away. Don't even leave, uncles. Stay and have dinner together." Ha! Ah, je can even cook. Smelling the smell, it really feels like that. Then let's stay and taste Ah je's craftsmanship. Ah je. I have no other requirements for you, Uncle Gu. As long as you don't burn, I can finish it for you. Ha! Upon Su Xiaoyun's return, all the trusted brothers in the gang were completely relieved and started joking easily. On the contrary, as parents, Su Xiaoyun and Wang Meifeng looked at each other in confusion. When did their son learn how to cook? When Su Xiaoyun came out after taking a bath and changing clothes, the 8 immortals table in the hall was already filled with several large pots of pickled Chinese cabbage fish. In addition, Suja also argued a few plates of peanuts to make drinks and dishes for his father and those brothers. Apart from Suja, this group of people are eating pickled Chinese cabbage fish for the first time. The novel and delicious fish slices have made them excited and appetizing. So, in the midst of drinking, all the fish fillets with a weight of more than 50 jin were wiped out by the dozen people. Even in the end, there was no pickled Chinese cabbage and radish left. After dinner, these brothers didn't stay much either. They greeted each other and left wisely. Before leaving, Suja brought a few steamed big crabs to each person and asked them to take them home to eat. As everyone left, the room returned to silence. When everyone left, Wang Meifeng stood up to tidy up the table, but was stopped by Su Xiaoyun. I saw Su Xiaoyun grabbing Wang Meifeng's hand and saying, "Feng, I'm so lucky that Su Xiaoyun can marry such a good wife like you. If it weren't for you this time, I probably wouldn't have seen you again." Faced with Su Xiaoyun's heartfelt confession, Wang Meifeng couldn't help but blush and immediately withdrew her hand. "Oh my, what nonsense. My son is still here." Suja couldn't help but laugh and immediately covered his eyes with his hand. He spread his 5 fingers and said, "It's okay. You guys keep going, I can see everything. Go aside." Wang Meifeng glanced at her own son and then looked at Su Xiaoyun. "You shouldn't thank me this time, but you should thank our son well. If it weren't for Ah Je, I wouldn't have been able to get you out so quickly." "What? Ah Je?" Su Xiaoyun hesitated for a moment and then looked at his son, who had an innocent expression on his face. "Are you saying that Ah Je saved me?" Wang Meifeng smiled and said, "To be precise, our son found a treasure and saved you with the gold inside." "Ah! Treasure. Gold." Su Xiaoyun looked bewildered. How could a treasure still emerge? "What do you mean? Where did the treasure and gold come from?" He. "I'll take care of this matter." Wang Meifeng excitedly gestured with both hands as she told Su Xiaoyun about the gold ship. When Su Xiaoyun heard that a gold transport ship worth billions of Hong Kong dollars was sinking on the seabed not far from the Xiang River, his eyes widened and his breathing became even faster. "If I had this money, I could recruit troops and buy horses, completely defeat Li Cuifa's grandson, and take over all the territory in his hands. At that time, our Ren Shi will definitely be able to recreate the prestige of the Qin gang in the Magic City." "Dad," Suja said calmly as he faced Su Xiaoyun, who was slightly excited. "The era of Douheixin and the Qin gang has passed. Xiangjiang is not the capital of demons. Leaving aside other prefixes, it's impossible for the Qin gang to grow. Even if you do, it's amazing. You're just working as a thug for those chambers of commerce families. Upon hearing these words, Su Xiaoyun couldn't help but silently lower his head. Having been in Xiangjiang for over half a year, Su Xiaoyun has deeply felt this. In Xiangjiang, no matter how well the big shots are doing, in front of those big shots from the Chamber of Commerce, they can only nod and bow to compensate for their smiling face, just like a grandson. After a long time, Su Xiaoyun looked up at his son and said, "If it were you, what would you want to do?" "Am I?" Su Jia smiled and said, "I want to control Xiangjiang. Then, conquer the world." Chapter 007. Su Jia's Ambition. The Five Towers of 1950. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Su Jia's words were spoken, it was as if a thunderbolt had exploded in Su Xiaoyun's ear, causing his face to suddenly change, and he suddenly stood up. I saw Su Xiaoyun's eyes staring straight at Su Jia, with a hint of surprise on his face. After a long time, Su Xiaoyun suddenly laughed heartily and sat back in his seat, picking up half a bottle of beer that had not been finished next to him. He drank it tons and tons in one breath. Bang! As he placed the empty wine bottle on the table, Su Xiaoyun laughed heartily. "It's truly my son, Su Xiaoyun. Ha ha ha. All right. You should know that back then, Su Xiaoyun was only a child born into a poor peasant family in the capital city. He had no family background, no support, and no money. If he were an ordinary person, he would probably become a tenant of the landlord's family, just like his father's generation, and then take a farmer's wife, living a difficult and ordinary life. But Su Xiaoyun is not willing. He is not willing to be destined to be a farmer in his lifetime, let alone to be destined to be a farmer in his lifetime. So, at the age of 12, he led a few fellow villagers who were also unwilling to be farmers for a lifetime to venture into the magic city. By chance, he gained the recognition of Zhang Renkue, the big generation of the Qin gang, and became his godfather. He then fought his life all the way to reach the position of a spokesperson for the Qin gang Ren society. Therefore, upon hearing that his son had such great ambitions, Su Xiaoyun not only did not mock his son's imagination, but also felt greatly relieved. After a burst of laughter, Su Xiaoyun looked at his son and asked, "So, you already have a plan?" Su Jia nodded and said, "I almost have a rough idea." Upon hearing this, Su Xiaoyun's spirit couldn't help but tremble. "Tell me about it." Su Jia extended two fingers and said, "If you want to control Xiangjiang, you can't escape the word, wealth and power. So, the first step is to get wealth and power." Wealth and power. Su Xiaoyun's eyes lit up. "I know this wealth, referring to that gold transport ship, right? As long as all the gold and silver treasures on that gold transport ship are salvaged and exchanged for cash, it is enough to become a wealthy person in Xiangjiang." Unexpectedly, Su Jia shook his head and said, "That's just one of the ways to make money." "What?" Upon hearing Su Jia's words, Su Xiaoyun and Wang Meifeng beside him were both stunned. Wang Meifeng immediately said, "Are you saying that you have other ways to make money?" "That's right." Su Jia nodded and said with a smile, "Actually, there are 5 big gold mines hidden in the present-day Xiangjiang River and Southeast Asia. 5 major gold mines." Upon hearing this, Su Xiaoyun and Wang Meifeng immediately widened their eyes. Before his parents could ask, Su Jia took the initiative to extend a finger and said, "The first gold mine is the military base next to us. Garrison base." Su Xiaoyun frowned. What kind of gold mines can there be? If there really were gold mines, I'm afraid those ghosts would have dug them up long ago. Dad, what I'm talking about is not a real gold mine, but an opportunity to make money. Su Jia explained with a wry smile before turning his head to look at Wang Meifeng. "Mom, do you remember how I got those 2 sets of diving and salvage equipment from that supervisor yesterday?" "Nonsense." Wang Meifeng gave her son a bad look and said, "Your mother, I'm not stupid. How could I forget?" What does it mean? What diving and salvage equipment? Su Xiaoyun looked at the women with a puzzled expression. It's like this. Wang Meifeng briefly explained her son's process of exchanging vegetables for diving and salvage equipment. So there's still this matter. Looking at the two women in front of him, Su Xiaoyun felt a warmth in his heart, and at the same time, there was a hint of inexplicable pride. The son of Laozi really has no means. However, thinking of the current topic, Su Xiaoyun immediately asked, "But what does this have to do with the gold mine you're talking about?" Su Zhe smiled and said, "The reason why I was able to get those two sets of diving and salvage equipment at such a cheap price is because there are too many civilian and material items in the station military base, and those ghosts don't even care about these things. As for another more important reason, the surge in personnel stationed at military bases has led to a significant shortage of daily necessities." So, Su Zhe reached out and shook his hand. "As long as we can help them solve this shortage of supplies, we can eat the fat of the supplies provided by the station military base." Originally, the supply of materials at the station base was controlled by the four major foreign companies, with no room or opportunity for others to intervene. However, with the sudden surge in the number of station troops and the collapse of the material supply system, coupled with the conflict between the station base and the four major foreign companies, Su Zhe was given the opportunity to take action. Currently, there are 30,000 troops stationed in the entire military base, and the estimated number of accompanying family members is over 60,000. The original material supplier only provided 1/3 of the supplies, and the remaining 2/3 have not been taken over by anyone so far. In the original history, the right to supply this material was ultimately taken by a pair of brothers from the Three Kingdoms, and 2 billionaires from the Three Kingdoms were finally created in Xiangjiang. And now, what Su Zhe needs to do is to cut off the who of these San brothers. Anyway, they are all earning money from ghosts. Instead of letting San earn it, it's better to earn it on his own. Of course. This is just the first step. Thinking of the enormous wealth and numerous crimes that Zhang Yoli had plundered and committed with opium and cannons by the great emperor of Xia for over 100 years, Su Zhe smiled coldly in his heart. Wait. I will definitely make you pay back 100 times, 1,000 times. Chapter 008, Fifth Super Gold Mine. I want only. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is what I called the first gold mine. Su Zhe said. At this moment, Wang Meifeng asked, "But the qualification for supplying goods is not just for us, is it? Why do those ghosts give us this opportunity to make money?" Solving this problem is actually quite simple, Su Zhe smiled and said, "The logistics work of the entire station base is under the responsibility of that logistics department manager, so as long as you give that ghost supervisor enough benefits." Upon hearing these words, Wang Meifeng and Su Xiaoyun's eyes lit up and suddenly became enlightened. Subsequently, Su Zhe extended his second finger. "This second gold mine is Victoria Harbor." Su Zhe said, "To be precise, it is a ship and shell that sank at the bottom of Victoria Harbor. In the post-war years, Hong Kong was extremely short of metals, and copper and iron prices were just like gold, increasing day by day. As long as we salvaged those ships and artillery shells, we could make a lot of money just by selling the iron and copper materials on them." In Su Zhe's memory, Zheng Yizhi, one of the billionaires of Xiangjiang in later generations and the helmsman of Jiehe Group, discovered this business opportunity at the bottom of Victoria Harbor and earned tens of millions by dismantling the copper and iron materials on ships and shells. He then purchased several large plots of land during the real estate boom, laying the foundation for the Xiangjiang family's position in one fell swoop. However, now that Su Zhe is a big cheater, Zheng Yizhi may have to look for another business opportunity. Su Zhe paused for a moment, picked up the nearby teacup and took a sip to moisten his throat, then continued, "The third gold mine is the current speculation market in Xiangjiang. Since the capitalists and financial speculators from the demon capital arrived in Xiangjiang, the gold price in Xiangjiang has been copied to an incredible level. From the current situation, these 20 Hong Kong dollars per gram prices are still not the end point. So, while the gold price is not yet collapsing, we can also join in and fish in troubled waters. At this moment, Su Xiaoyun suddenly gave a fierce smile and said, I remember those two brats He Xiaoguang and Lu Guangwei were just frying gold. The two people mentioned by Su Xiaoyun are capitalists from the Magic City and also those who colluded with Li Cuifa to frame Su Xiaoyun into the police station. That's perfect. Su Zhe grinned and showed a cold smile. Dig a pit for them and kill them all in it, so they can taste what it means to have a broken family and a dead person. For those two capitalists who framed Su Xiaoyun, Su Zhe would not have any sympathy. You do the first year of junior high school, I do the 15th. Since they have chosen to collude with Li Cuifa and are determined to kill Su Xiaoyun, then don't blame Su Zhe for being ruthless. This fourth gold mine is post-war supplies. As a strategic stronghold on the Pacific battlefield, Okinawa and the Sulu Islands have left behind a large amount of wartime supplies. Aircraft, ships, tanks, motorcycles, and shells left over from various battles, and so on. These things were left on the island as ownerless after the war, and even the Allies spent money searching for people to clean up these supplies everywhere. On the Sulu Islands, the United States has left behind nearly 10,000 Stuart tanks, and now they are selling them for $10 each. Besides, there are at least $34 billion worth of post-war supplies waiting to be processed in the beautiful country now. As long as we can get these supplies in our hands, not to mention all of them, even if it's only 1%, we can make at least $1 billion by just flipping them over. Hiss. Upon hearing these words, Su Xiaoyun and Wang Meifeng coincidentally increased their breathing. Watching the increasingly excited expressions of Su Xiaoyun and Wang Meifeng, Su Zhe couldn't help but smile and said, Don't worry, Dad and Mom, I still have one last big gold mine to talk about. Compared to this fifth gold mine, the first four gold mines are just a piece of cake. What? Upon hearing Su Zhe's words, Su Xiaoyun and his wife immediately widened their eyes. You should know that when these first four gold mines are combined, there is already at least 2 billion yuan in the bottom line. Surprisingly, Su Zhe said that in front of the fifth gold mine, these 2 billion yuan are just a piece of cake. However, the two of them did not speak. Instead, they held their breath and looked straight at their son, waiting for him to speak. Faced with his parents' reaction, Su Zhe smiled without showing any concern and said directly, throughout World War II, the footed chicken plundered over $100 billion in wealth in Southeast Asian countries, including over 6,000 tons of gold and 500,000 carats of diamonds. Some of these treasures were transported back to the country by the footpot chickens for hiding, while others were found by Eagle Sauce and secretly transported back to the country. However, most of them were secretly buried on the major islands of the Philippines' domestic servant country. As long as we find these treasure troves, then all these wealthy families in Xiangjiang, combined, won't have as much money as us. In fact, in Su Zhe's memory of fusion, there are several locations of large treasure troves, some of which are from the wealthy individuals of several footed chickens on the cruise ship and the Philippines. The first bucket of gold for these billionaires to get rich comes from more than a dozen large treasure troves on the Philippine Mercenary Islands. In the 1970s, they successively found the treasure buried on the island by the foot-pot chicken army, quietly monetized it, and then developed rapidly with a large amount of cash flow, eventually becoming the wealthiest group in the world. In addition, there are also memories of dozens of treasure troves in Su Zhe's past life. That was what Su Zhe saw in a historical revelation on CCTV. In the program, it was said that in the 1970s, the president of the Philippines secretly sold gold in places such as London, Sydney, and Xiangjiang. The largest gold transaction amount was actually more than 10 tons, which was higher than the gold reserves of the Philippines at that time. During his tenure, the total amount of gold sold was over 100 tons. A few years later, a Western biographer wrote a biography for the president, and through his wife's mouth, she learned about the locations of those treasure troves and made them public. These treasure troves were also announced one by one on CCTV's program. Now, these treasure troves will all become Suja's belongings. After listening to Suja's description of this fifth large gold mine, Su Xiaoyun and Wang Meifeng were stunned for about 10 seconds. Even though they have become accustomed to fighting and killing in the martial arts world, and have gone through countless trials and tribulations, in the face of this massive wealth, they still cannot help but be overwhelmed by the impact on their minds. After a long time, the Su Xiaoyun couple finally came to their senses. At this moment, Su Xiaoyun suddenly stood up and stopped drinking. He walked back and forth in the lobby to relieve his inner excitement. As for Wang Meifeng, she was also excitedly wiping the table with a cloth, as if trying to make a hole in it. After another moment, when Suja saw that their minds had finally stabilized, he said, "These 5 gold mines are what I call wealth. But if you only have wealth without power, the more wealth you have, the faster you will die. So, we must also have momentum. This power is not just limited to the hands of influential people. It is also a power that can cover up the sky with one hand." Suja paused and looked at Su Xiaoyun. "Dad, this situation depends on you to take action. Don't worry, I will arrange everything for you. You just need to listen to my arrangements." Chapter 009. The Disregarded Li Cuifa and Mr. Du. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just as Suja and his father were planning a strategy to control Xiangjiang, in a private room of the Lychee Garden nightclub at the north corner of Xiangjiang, Li Cuifa was chatting and laughing with 5 merchants from the Magic City to exchange cups and cups. Just then, a subordinate suddenly knocked on the door and came in, leaning in Li Tilefa's ear and whispering a few words. Li Cuifa's face suddenly changed and he said, "Are you talking nonsense? Did the Kowloon Police Department release Su Xiaoyun, that old red guy?" "What? That Su Xiaoyun has come out." Upon hearing Li Tilefa's words, the 2 middle-aged men who were originally eating tofu from a drinking companion turned pale, and the wine glass in their hands almost fell off the table. These 2 middle-aged men are the demon merchants He Xiaoguang and Lu Guangwei who colluded with Li Cuifa and intentionally framed Su Xiaoyun. The 2 of them immediately stood up nervously and asked, "What's going on? Mr. Li, you have told us that Su Xiaoyun will definitely not survive for 3 days at the police station." "Yeah. Didn't you say you had already arranged to kill that Su Xiaoyun as soon as possible? Why did you release him?" Faced with their questioning, Li Cuifa stared at them and threw his cup directly to the ground. "Grass. Are you questioning me? I really want to ask that grandson about it. Mother sheepy. How do I know that red guy Zhang Rongjin doesn't do anything when he collects money?" The Zhang Rongjin mentioned by Li Cuifa was the scout who led the team to capture Su Xiaoyun into the Kowloon police station, and also the trusted general of Detective Hua Lu Fu of the Kowloon police station. At this moment, the private door was knocked open again, and another subordinate of Li Cuifa pushed them in, seemingly sensing that the atmosphere inside was not right. He immediately took 2 steps forward and said, "Boss. Someone is fighting outside." Upon hearing these words, Li Cuifa rushed forward with one swift step and slapped the other person in the face, pointing at their nose and cursing, "Mother sheepy. Are you really a pig? Who dares to cause trouble on my Li Cuifa's land? Let's all get out of here." "But boss, one of them is the second son of the president of Chaozhou Chamber of Commerce, and the other is the godson of Detective Hua Fu from Kowloon Police Station. I dare not." "What? How could these 2 people get into a fight?" Detective Lu's godson drank too much and had to force Julie on stage to come over and offer a toast. As you know, Julie has always been covered by the second young master, so when he saw this situation, the second young master didn't say a word and directly smashed a bottle of Detective Lu's godson's wine. Grass. A group of idle second-generation ancestors who hurt their eggs. Li Cuifa cursed and said to the group of magic merchants in the private room, "Drink it first, I'll come when I go." Then he left the private room. At this moment, the few people in the private room were not even interested in drinking. They were sitting there one by one, looking at me, and I was looking at you. How about we go out and take a look too? A businessman suggested softly. This proposal was immediately approved by the other 4 businessmen, so several people walked out of the private rooms and arrived at the dance floor hall where the conflict occurred. They happened to see Li Cuifa smiling and saying good things to 2 young people with rebellious faces. Upon seeing this scene, a merchant from the Magic City couldn't help but chuckle and say, "Old he. This is what you call Xiangjiang Douheixin. He, that's it." Another merchant from the Magic City also openly showed his disdain and said, "A grand leader of the Xiang*** gang, who is so subservient to 2 young disciples. How dare he call himself Xiangjiang Douheixin? This is simply ruining Mr. Dou's reputation. In the Magic City, not to mention a small detective, even if it's the magical city chief, I have to respect Mr. Dou with all my heart. But Li Cuifa, facing a detective's godson, is so subservient. Is that all you want to do? Do you want to regain the reputation of the Qin gang in the Magic City?" Ha! Lao He and Lao Lu, considering that we have known each other for many years, I advise you to stay away from Mr. Li. Also, I have dealt with Su Xiaoyun a few times before, and Mr. Dou has also evaluated him as a ruthless person. I really don't understand his factional dispute with Li Cuifa. What are you 2 doing together? Hey! You 2, take care of yourself. After saying these words, the merchant from the Magic City didn't even shout and left with his 2 bodyguards. The other 2 merchants looked at each other, arched their hands, followed closely behind, and left the nightclub. Watching his 3 old friends leave like this, He Xiaoguang and Lu Guangwei couldn't help but look at each other, feeling a bit like crying without tears. They just felt that Douheixin was old and couldn't protect them anymore, so they wanted to find someone else who could protect them. Coincidentally, Li Cuifa took over most of the influence of the Qin gang in Xiangjiang, which naturally became their first choice. As for helping Li Cuifa kill Su Xiaoyun, it was just a petition they used to make friends and please Li Cuifa. Just now it seems that this application may be killing me. Thinking of this, the 2 of them couldn't help but feel anxious, to the extent that in the following period of time, they dared not even step out of the nightclub's door and spent the whole day nestled in the private room of the nightclub, trembling, afraid that Su Xiaoyun would come knocking at them. On the other hand, Su Xiaoyun naturally did not know that the news of his release would bring such a great psychological shadow to the 2 people who betrayed him. That night, Su Xiaoyun carefully listened to his son's advice on how to build influence and gain power. When he heard it, he drank heavily, and in the end, he got drunk at the dining table. Chapter 010. Realizing Gold Bars. The price of gold has risen again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, Suja got up early in the morning, ate 2 large bowls of vegetables and soaked rice, then carried a backpack containing 25 gold bars and left the door alone. A gold bar weighs 1 kilogram, and 20.5 pieces weigh 50 pounds. If an ordinary person carries a 50-pound package, they may have to rest a few steps, but Suja carries this 50-pound backpack as if carrying an empty bag, relaxed and effortless. After leaving the village, Suja took a taxi and headed straight to Tsim Sha Sui ferry terminal, then boarded the boat to Xiangjiang Island. About 10 minutes later, the ship docked and Suja headed straight to the Ma Sha Street in Shanghuan, 600 meters away. Since the 1930s, Maisha Street in Shanghuan and its adjacent Wenxian East Street have been known as the well-known Gold and Silver Street in Hong Kong. This street gathers over 100 gold shops, silver shops, pawn shops, and other shops in Hong Kong. Of course, the most important reason is that it is the location of the Xiangjiang Gold and Silver Trading Center. The so-called Gold and Silver Trading Ground is a place where gold and silver are the main trading objects. Initially, it provided people with spot buying and selling of gold and silver, but later gradually became gold and silver contract trading, also known as futures trading. A few minutes later, Suzhou arrived at the gold and silver trading ground located on Maisha Street in Xiangjiang. At this moment, people were coming and going at the entrance of the first-floor hall of the entire trading ground, crowded with people shouting, laughing, and cursing. The voices were mixed together, almost like going to a temple fair, lively and extraordinary. These people are naturally here to stir-fry gold. From 1948 to 1951, it was the craziest 4 years for Xiangjiang to stir-fry gold. The weekly trading volume of gold futures in the entire gold industry was over 60 million yuan, equivalent to nearly 10 million yuan per day. You should know that in this era, an ordinary dual worker family's annual income is only 2,000 to 3,000 Hong Kong dollars. The reason behind this is still due to the sustained high price of gold. Imagine that gold, which was originally only 4 Hong Kong dollars per gram, has multiplied several times in less than a year. Who could resist this temptation and not be tempted? Some people cannot resist such temptation and even run to pawn shops to mortgage their land deeds and properties to speculate on gold. However, what they probably wouldn't have dreamed of was that just as they were dreaming of creating a millionaire through speculation, the market makers standing in the dark had already slowly raised their sickles. Suzhou stepped into the building where the trading ground was located and then headed straight to the restroom. During the 10 or so minutes in the restroom, Suzhou transformed himself into another appearance that even his parents couldn't recognize, using the techniques he had absorbed from several international thieves in his memory. After changing into another outfit and backpack, Suzhou walked out of the trading ground. After crossing the street and turning into Wenxian East Street, Suzhou finally walked into the entrance of a shop called Jingfu Jinpu. The owner of Jingfu Gold Shop is named Xiangjiang, who is from Guangdong Province and used to be the manager of Xiangjiang Dio Gold Shop. Later, due to business downturn, the owner of the gold shop transferred the shop to Xiangjiang. After accepting the operation, the latter changed the Dio Gold Shop to Jingfu Gold Shop, specializing in gold, silver, jewelry, and clock business. When Suzhou heard that he had a large amount of gold in his hand and wanted to sell it, Xiangjiang, the owner of the gold shop, personally received him and invited him into the VIP room with great solemnity. Then, he called in 3 old masters from the gold shop to verify the gold bars one by one in front of Suzhou. In the end, the confirmed weight of gold for these 25 gold bars with a total weight of 25,000 grams was 23,750 grams, which means that the gold content of each gold bar here is approximately 95%. At the metallurgical level of the mid-19th century, reaching 95% purity is definitely a quite high level. Suzhou agrees with this verification result. Once the weight of gold has been confirmed, the next step is naturally the price issue. Xiangjiang said, "Mr. Wang, pseudonym Suzhou, based on the settlement pricing of gold at the gold and silver trading ground yesterday afternoon, the settlement price of gold this morning is 23 Hong Kong dollars per gram. Due to its unique geographical location and various factors, the gold price of Xiangjiang is not in line with international gold prices, but is announced by the Xiangjiang Gold and Silver Trading Center. The trading floor will provide official settlement prices based on the market prices of gold futures at 11:30 a.m. and 4:00 p.m. every day, and conduct settlement checks on all open positions of gold futures. If the contract price of gold futures held by someone is lower than the settlement price, the trading floor will compensate the other party with the difference, which is called interest rate hike in the industry. If someone holds a contract with a price higher than the settlement price, the trading floor will deduct the deposit they placed in the trading floor, which is called interest reduction in the industry. Once the interest rate reduction exceeds the margin, it will be forcibly liquidated, which is a well-known liquidation in the stock market in later times. But you also know that this settlement price is our guide price for gold shop shipments, and you have to follow the purchase price. I understand all of this. Suzhou smiled and said, "Boss Yang, you can give me the actual price directly. If I think it's suitable, I'll sell all 25 gold bars to you. If it's not suitable, I'll find another one. 20 yuan. The other party gritted their teeth and said, "Mr. Wang, I'll pay 20 yuan per gram." 20 yuan per gram. Suzhou raised an eyebrow, and the price was basically the gold market price of the previous 2 days. As a result, when the other party saw Suzhou frowning, they thought he was not satisfied with the price he quoted. They immediately said, "Mr. Wang, don't think I'm talking big. I can guarantee that the price I offered is definitely the highest on the entire gold and silver street. After all, the price of gold is already a bit outrageous now, and the risk is getting higher and higher. If you don't believe it, you can go to another house. Deal." Before the other party could finish speaking, Suzhou snapped his fingers and said, "Boss Yang, I'll sell you this gold bar. 50 gold bars, totaling 23,750 grams of gold, cost 20 yuan per gram, which is 475,000 yuan. Oh. Okay. Xiangjiang was stunned for a moment and immediately reacted, nodding his head repeatedly. Haha. Mr. Wang, thank you for your trust. Do you want cash or bank checks? I can provide check transfers for several Chinese-funded banks, including East Asia and Bank of China. In the 1950s, there was a serious discrimination phenomenon in the Xiangjiang banking industry. Western banks led by Cuifa and Standard Chartered rarely took on Chinese business, and even if they did, they had to be recommended by Chinese giants. Therefore, the general Xiangjiang Huashang can only deal with a few Chinese-funded banks. In the 1940s and 1950s, the largest Chinese-funded bank in Xiangjiang was East Asia Bank. As for Hang Seng Bank, which later became known as Xiangjiang Second, it is still just a bank specializing in gold trading and foreign exchange business. Do you have US dollars? Cash? Suzhou asked. USD. The other party was stunned for a moment and then nodded, yes. In order to curb the continued frenzy of private gold speculation, Xiangjiang Jingfu issued restrictions on the free trading of pure gold and banned private imports of gold last year. In the face of huge interests, major gold shops took risks and began to smuggle gold crazily from the neighboring city of Haojiang. However, because those smugglers only recognized US dollars and not Hong Kong dollars, major gold shops had prepared a large amount of US dollars in cash. Suzhou said, "Then exchange 100,000 US dollars for me, and exchange all the rest for the big yellow croaker from your gold shop." The so-called big yellow croaker is an elegant term in the domestic gold market for 10 taels of gold bars, and correspondingly, 1 or 2 taels of small gold bars are called small yellow croaker. Unlike the later commonly used international weight unit of 50 grams per kilogram, Xiangjiang still used the old domestic algorithm during this period, which was about 31.25 grams per kilogram and about 16 taels per kilogram. Therefore, a 10 liang gold bar produced by Xiangjiang is actually only 312.5 grams. A few minutes later, Suzhou left the shop with $100,000 and 12 big yellow croakers. Going out of the Jinpu, Suzhou took a taxi and went straight to the department store not far away. In the department store, he threw off several pickpockets and habitual bandits who followed him, and then returned to the central wharf to board the boat and leave Xiangjiang Island. At Tsim Sha Sui Ferry Terminal in Kowloon, Suzhou took a taxi and headed straight back home. As soon as he arrived at the doorstep and hadn't even entered, Suzhou heard a roaring noise coming from inside the house.